Well, Lisa, it's been an intense battle to claim the city of Kharkiv that sits in the country's east, very close to the Russian border. Now, some have described this as the first true street fighting that we have seen throughout this four-day invasion. Some people are calling this real urban warfare. We're talking about shots being fired down suburban streets, grenades being thrown down boulevards. People say this city is usually quite cosmopolitan and vibrant when it's not under siege. It's home to 1.5 million people usually. And throughout all of this, those who have stayed, it's thought that hundreds of them are seeking shelter in a metro station while all of this plays out on the streets above them, and other residents have been bunkering down. But as this day comes to an end, Ukraine's military claims that it is still in control of the city, that it has managed to repel Russian forces. So at the end of this is day 4 of the invasion here in Ukraine, and it's very difficult to tell whether things are escalating or de-escalating because, as we just heard, Russia has made threats about using nuclear weapons in a sense, but at the same time, for the first time throughout this conflict, there is the prospect of peace talks that may come very shortly between Ukraine and Russia, and for the first time they are peace talks that are not conditional. So as we wrap up this day here, it's really hard to know what's to come.
Isabella, though, it was that move by Putin on the nuclear threat, putting them on alert, that really alarmed people and has dominated the headlines this morning. What was the sense there when that news started filtering out?
Just the words nuclear weapons really scare people. And when you're living here in this country, I was standing around people as those news alerts were coming through, and you could almost see people take a gasp in. You know, this was the escalation that no one wanted to see. And at this stage, of course, he's just said that he's put that it's not a promise, it's not definitely going to happen, but just the threat of it is enough to make people very nervous. Here in this city of Lviv, where many people have come, where they are using this as a safe place, that threat of possible nuclear warfare, that was enough to make them decide that they wanted to leave, that if they were deciding to say they wanted to go. And of course, we know that the lines to get out of this country at the moment are enormous, 35 kilometres. You know, we're hearing warnings from the EU that there could be 7 million people displaced in the coming days. I mean, that is an enormous amount of people. That's as many people as live in, Melbourne and Perth combined. So that's the situation here on the ground, Lisa.
And those words, Barbara, if I can turn to you in DC, the words of the nuclear forces being put on alert must have filled people in Washington with dread. What's been the US reaction?
Well, we haven't heard directly from the president. He's been in his home of Delaware this weekend. We hear that he is getting regular updates from his national security team. We did hear some strong condemnation, as you'd expect, of those statements by President Putin from the US ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield. She said that that kind of rhetoric proved that nothing was off the table for this guy, and she said it was totally unacceptable of Putin to be escalating the war in this way. So, of course, as with most of Putin's statements, no one's quite sure whether it's merely posturing or whether he's trying to signal again, as he did ahead of this invasion, that perhaps nuclear conflict is a possibility here. Those comments came in what seemed to be a very staged event for President Putin. He was seen addressing his defence chiefs, talking about the unfriendly actions of the West, meaning sanctions, and the aggression coming from NATO leaders, and said, therefore, he wanted deterrence forces, including nuclear deterrence forces, being put on high alert. His defence minister was seen dutifully saying, yes, sir, in response to that. As Isabella says, at the same time, Russia is still extending this offer to Ukraine of talks, an offer which Ukraine has now accepted, though not in Belarus itself. They refused to go into the Russian allied country Belarus, but on the border with Belarus, and we expect those talks to take place on Monday local time.
All right, Barbara and Isabella, thanks.